Bear with me, I'm gonna work through this as best I can. I want to thank everybody for coming to honor my dad. Although today is going to be very hard, I want to take the time to remember and honor the special memories I had with him. Pops was always had a sly personality, always quick to tell a joke, had an even quicker wit. He loved to make people laugh, even if it was in the most unpolitical way. That's probably one of the greatest traits I inherited from him, is that lack of filter. He was honest, and he couldn't help it. If he thought it, he said it, no matter who was around. Nobody could deny his honesty. Pops always had life lessons to teach. There were many days spent in the garage exchanging stories about how days went. He's always had an anecdotal message in his stories that had to do with the problems of the day. Sometimes something he'd seen or heard that reminded him of an old memory. And no matter my situation, he always had a way to fix it. He always had some kind of wisdom to impart on me. He always tried to use life experiences to make sure I'd learn before I made a mistake. Sometimes I'd listen, sometimes I had to make my own mistakes, but he was always there to listen. Pops might not have been the perfect father, but I feel like he was the perfect father for me. He taught me how to be a great friend. He was the only man I knew that had lifelong friends. I grew up with the three main ones I never knew were friends. I always thought they were uncles. Uncle Ron, Judah, Donnie. They're all sitting here tonight. Was a sign of the kind of friend he was, and the kind of friend we all lost today. Never cheat, lie, or steal was one of the earliest lessons I remember hearing. Work hard for everything you want. That way when you get it, nobody can question you. Dad always instilled a hard work ethic. Always be on time, and always take pride in your work. And no matter what, at the end of the day, you can hold your head high. I know it's cliche, but respect is earned, not given. He always taught me to respect everybody until it was time not to. This was probably the most important lesson, because it taught me to go through life as a proud man, not being a doormat. Be proud of who you are. Deliver respect when it's warranted, and command respect when it's deserved. I've tried to live my life in that regard. I know I made him proud when he was here, and I hope to continue to make him proud in his absence. He loved his grandchildren. No matter what mood he was in, they could always bring a smile to his face. One of his favorite activities was rolling down the street to the school ball field to watch Cam practice. He'd always call me if I hadn't made it from work. to give me a play-by-play, even though it was only practice. He loved hearing about the kids' activities when he couldn't make it. He was always quick to call and ask how it went, whether it was Grayson's belt test, or Collier's t-ball game, or flag football. He just wanted to know. He loved his grandkids near and far, dearly. I will always cherish the memories I have with my father, and know he's smiling down on all of us, friends. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight to celebrate his life. And we don't have a big thing planned, so if anybody wants to come up and say some words or feel like they got to get something on their heart, you're more than welcome to. But I do thank everybody who came, and thank some that couldn't be here that have called. I'm gonna go clean up for a minute, and I'll be back. But anybody who wants to talk or say something, please.
Get my thoughts together. I'm Bill's sister, and we were the crazy kids that grew up on Edison Avenue together. And we had some fantastic times. Like we used to talk about as we grew up that we helped build I-10 because it was around the corner from our house. And we would go over there when they would all go home and climb on the equipment. We would slide down where they made overpasses. And we would just have the best time. We'd go home and then we'd be so full of that sand and dirt and crud. And our grandmother, who mostly raised us, mostly took care of us, she would get in that bathroom and get yourself cleaned up. And that was one of the most fun things we had. But for some reason, we were just always together. We would go down Edison Avenue and north where there was a river, and not me, I'm not touching that fish. But he would fish and fish and fish just with whatever we had to take with us. And growing up on Edison Avenue was a rough area. We were in the middle of, we had a lot of people of color as friends, and we had the other side that were friends like, you kids are crazy, you can't go over there. But we had good friends on both sides, and we were just, he's just so special to me because he was just right there together with me. And we would do so much together when we were little. And a couple times we told our parents, or told our grandmother rather, that we were going down to I-10 to play, but we took our money a couple times, put it together, got on the bus and went to the beach. And I mean, this is elementary age kids. And we'd go to the beach, stay all day, come home, and how come you all got sunburn? What have you been doing? play in the water and play on the, play in the sand, get our little bit of money back, get back on the bus and come back home late. Nothing ever happened. And things like that. He was the most creative one. Most of this, I'm telling you, was his ideas. I need you to go with me. You're my sister. You gotta go with me. So there was around the corner from us, and this is not the best thing to tell, but there was a casket company. And he one time went back there where they make them, and they put them in the boxes. He got in the box. And I was standing out watching, because he says, you gotta watch this. Or what happened was, when the people were coming out to put the casket in the box, he pops out of the box. Scared them all to death. And I was trying to think, what are the craziest things we did? And that was another one of them. But we played down there all the time, and they said it was okay as long as we didn't mess with anything. But we really didn't. We would just go, they put their cardboard boxes out, and we'd play with the boxes. The ones that were broken or they couldn't use. But the day he scared them all to death by jumping out of that box, I was thinking, I wonder who's gonna get the casket in that box. Because he might be jumping out at him even today. Just all those kinds of things. And we went to school together, we walked to school together, come home together, and he was a good protector for me, although I was the older sister. He didn't let anybody come near me to give me a hard time or anything. He just lit into them, literally. And you leave her alone, and I'm like, hey, this is good. Because we went to the same schools, we went to the same church. He and I would walk to and from church a lot of times from our house, which was a couple miles away, actually. And we'd be in the same classes. If I was in my older class, he wanted to come with me, and he would cry and put on this face like, my mom says I gotta stay with her. And then there were times I would go with him to his class in Sunday school, just cause we wanted to be together. And the times that we shared were just, right now they're just a very big blessing to my heart that we did things together. And we really didn't do what I'd say the bad things other than the casket thing. But we just went all over the place and together, so much together. So then when we ended up having to split our family up, that was a very, very difficult thing. So we talked to each other, and now towards the end, I was very blessed to get to talk to him on the phone more and more and more as he was having the issues that he was having with his health, and that was very hard. But there's so many other stories of things that we did do together, even when he would come down and see us, or we'd come up to Jacksonville and get to see him. He was just a good brother. He was the younger brother, but he was the good brother, and it's been very hard to think that he won't be there to talk on the phone, as we did many times recently, many times recently, and in the past as well. But if you knew Bill Dyer, he did make you laugh, he did make you feel good. If something was wrong, he would want to know what it was, and he'd go try to fix it. So much more I could probably say, so many other stories. We would climb everybody's tree in the neighborhood. I think there wasn't a tree around Edison Avenue that he and I didn't get in the tree, wait for people to go by so we could jump down out of the tree. These are all his ideas, believe me. Because he says, let's go do this, or let's go do that. And we'd go down to the fire station together, because there was one around the corner from where we lived, and we would hang out there. And that was another fun thing, because the guys in the fire station were always, come on, y'all come on in. And they knew us by name, they knew us by sight, and then they'd say, time for you guys to go home. Because we just wanted to hang out together and do things together. So many stories like that. I just wanted you to know that there was such a fun, good-natured part of him that he shared with others, especially to the going to church things. If there was church things and little kids getting picked on the way or coming back, he took over, and he didn't let that happen. He just, but there's a lot of houses between a mile or so, or a couple miles, that we lived from church. And if something was going wrong with some little kids, he would go, take his brute self and say, hey, he would fight for the little guys. So there's just things like that in my heart forever. And I miss him, and I hope he's doing the right things that he's supposed to be doing up there instead of being creative, hiding out or doing things like that. So anyway, thanks for listening, but it was just a wonderful life that we had together. And I'm very proud to know his son and family. It's just, I appreciate it, to get to hear about them and how they're growing, and seeing them tonight is awesome. So I appreciate that too. Thank you.
So, my name is Deborah Parker, and I am his niece. That's my mom who just sat down. And over the last few days, I've really thought about a lot of memories that I have with Uncle Billy, and I forgot. There was a lot of things I just hadn't thought about recently. But we did have such a wonderful time together, and I loved talking with him on the phone. And one of my favorite things, I live outside of Atlanta, and he would come to my house and visit with me. Him and Jimmy would come and spend a week, and they'd bring their family, and we had such a good time. And we would talk on the phone, and he would be, it was just such a highlight to talk about different memories, different things we did whenever he would come. But my favorite thing, Uncle Bill would always get up real early. He would always have trouble sleeping, and sometimes, be 4 or 5 o'clock, and he'd be sitting in the living room or sitting at I'd always find him sitting at the table. And I also like to get up early. And my husband and I, we have 4 kids, and of course he has his 3 kids, and so I'd get up real early, make some coffee, and I have a back deck, and we'd sit on the back deck and just sit outside, and we'd drink coffee. And sometimes we drink coffee till, we might start at, 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. We might drink coffee till 11. And so my kids, his kids, they'd be all coming out, Mom, I'm hungry, what's for breakfast, what are we doing? And be like, go on, we're gonna drink some more coffee, And so that was one of my favorite memories with him, is sitting outside drinking coffee. And whenever he would go home, I would take pictures off my back deck, and I'd hold up my coffee cup, and I'd send him a text, and I'd say, I'm enjoying this cup of coffee, I wish you were here with me. And he would send me a picture back, and sometimes he'd have his cat laying on him, or he'd be laying in bed with his feet sticking up in the air, and he'd say, well, this is what I'm doing right now, he would send me something back. But those were such special times, because he did always make everybody feel so good about themselves, and he would just listen, and he would tell the funniest stories, and we just had so much fun sitting out there for hours. Even though our kids were nagging at us and coming on, we just had such a good time sitting out there talking together, and I so appreciate that. So appreciate those times. We talked a lot on the phone together too. I had forgotten about all the fun stuff that we had done. Him and Jimmy came up years ago, and they were going to go to this NASCAR race, and it was around Halloween, and we had such a good time visiting at my house that they drove halfway to the race, and then they just came back to my house, and they didn't even go, and they came back, and we just visited and hung out. And like I said, I live outside of Atlanta a little bit, and I took them to this little local restaurant in town, and in our area, college football is king. Everybody, I personally am a Clemson fan, but everybody in our area is Georgia fans, and a few straggle Alabama fans. But anyways, so it was the day of this race was the day of the Florida-Georgia game. So it was a big deal, a big deal in our area. So this one little restaurant we went to for breakfast, they had painted all of their windows with bulldogs and stuff like that for the Florida game. So we walk into this restaurant, it's full of people, and we walk in, and Uncle Billy just goes, hey, we're Gators. And I was like, what are you doing? You cannot do this in here. And he was just like so happy-go-lucky, hey, we're Gators. And I was like, oh, we're gonna get killed before we get out of this restaurant. He didn't meet a stranger in there. He just sat down, talked about them Gators and how proud he was to be a Gator. And all those Georgia people were looking at him like, yeah, you better get out of here. But I remember just thinking, Uncle Billy, you don't understand. You can't do that up here. But didn't bother him a bit. But we had fun. We talked a lot of football. We talked a lot of NASCAR. Just a lot of good stuff. He loved my kids like his own. He would call all the time asking what they were into, how they were doing. Just fun stuff. Just very good stuff. We had a lot of good talks, a lot of good times. He was wonderful to all of us.
Can't quit talking about it. But I do have to say one more thing that I did promise him that I would talk about. And that is, we talked about going to church. This might be harder. And when he was young, and we'd go to vacation Bible school, we would go to Bible school, we would go to church. In our church, which was Trinity Baptist Church in Jacksonville, when we would walk to church, and we totally, in that church, they taught us about salvation and how to believe in Jesus Christ as your Savior, and that when you receive Him, He comes into your heart, and because you believe in Jesus and receive Him, then when you die, you will go to heaven to be with Him. That's a promise in the Bible. But when we would go to church and hear that a lot, about you really need to receive Jesus so that when you die you can go to heaven, because that's the only way you get there. And he would ask me about that, because I was 3-4 years older. And one night he came to me crying and said, I need to talk to somebody about how to believe in Jesus. So we stayed and talked to the pastor later, and then we went home. He didn't make a decision then. But then later on, about a week or so later, he came to me just crying and saying how he now understood what it was to become saved, to become a Christian, and to be a believer. Some people may not think, because of how he acted or lived in his life at times, that he wasn't a Christian, but he truly came out that night saying, his phrase was exactly this: God got me tonight, and I'm going to be His forever. Because he had gone back to the pastor and says, I really need to know what it takes to know Jesus Christ as my Savior and be saved and be born again, as they call it in our church. And I did tell him a long time ago, when he started to be ill, or when we talked about life and death sometimes anyway, that he wanted to make sure that his family knew, and that we knew, and those of you that are believers would know that as a kid, he said, God got me tonight. And I remember talking to him on the phone several times over the years, and I'd ask him, does God still got you? Oh yeah, I'll never let go of him. And I just sat there thinking, when I was listening to Debbie, that I had forgotten to say that, because I had promised him that I would let people know that he was truly a Christian, truly a believer, and that when he was very young and we were going to church together, that he did receive Christ in his heart, and that God got him that night. So thanks for listening to that part, because I didn't want to go away and not have said those things about him and his Christian life, because then, more story, that we would go to vacation Bible school together. We even went to a couple of churches that we didn't belong to, just so we could go to vacation Bible school as kids do. And we had, across the street from us became a people of color community, and those were were some of our friends too, and we would go to their Bible school. And we would be like the other side of mixing together during those years, cause that was in the 50s. And anyway, it was just so you know that he truly had a good Christian background and he truly believed in Jesus Christ as his Savior. So I promised him I'd say that when the time came, so.
Now she brought that up. I just wanna say that, you know, you're talking about years ago that he made that decision. I talked to Bill less than a month ago about that. And, he told me that, he says, I'm right with God. So I just wanted to let everybody know that, you know, I mean, Bill and I had a lot of fun doing things that probably weren't right all the time too. But, you know, when it comes right down to it, his mind was where it needed to be. So, but, Bill was a good friend of mine. I've known him since 1967. I'm Ronnie. We just went to high school together. We went to a couple NASCAR things together. We went to see Braves play. Bill liked to go. He liked to do things. When he went, he wanted to have fun. And we had fun. We would always have a good time anywhere we went. And, you mentioned friends, but you know, Bill has lifetime friends. And, everybody, you know, wanted to help Bill out if they could. Donnie, I don't know how many times he took him to the doctor in the end there. But, Donnie was a good friend of Bill. And, you know, Jerry and everybody just, you know, I don't know what it was about Bill, but you were just attracted to him and wanted to hang out with him and do things with him. We liked to go fishing, and we just had a good time together. So, but anyway, I just want to mention that about what you brought up about the spiritual aspect.
My name's Jerry Judah. I've known Bill since '67 also. And I've been very blessed to have him in my life all these years. And it's really funny that Ron was up here. We was riding around in Ron's car in the summer of '67, and Bill said, well, my birthday's coming up tomorrow. And I said, no, man, tomorrow's my birthday. And he said, no, he said, get that paper license out. That's what we had back in them days. So we got the old paper license out, and I handed mine, and he handed his to me, and we looked at it. And ever since that day, every July 9th, every morning, he would call, or I'd call him first, or he'd call, whichever we made it to it. But Bill was a Christian person, because I don't never know of anything that he's ever done wrong that I wouldn't have been proud to stand by his side. The morning that Bill was passing away at the hospital, I went up. Some told me to go ahead to the hospital, and I went on up there and sat there, and I was holding his hand, and the nurse come in, and she cleared his throat and all again, and I told Bill to go ahead and be with God, that it's his place, that's where he's gonna be. But Bill was such a good friend, Ronnie. And I just had to come up and tell you how much I loved him. There wasn't a time that I didn't hang up that phone, and I talked to him about every day, and I'd tell him how much I loved him, and he'd tell me that he loved me too. And it took many years for Bill to say that he loved you. But he was that kind of a person. And Jimmy and Ronnie, I remember when y'all were born in Christie. It's just been a close thing. And I do love y'all. I really do. But I didn't want to sit there and not get up here and come up here and tell you how much that I loved him and I appreciated him. And I still appreciate him, and I'll see him one day. I will see him one day. Okay, John.
I'm probably the last person that should be up here, because I probably haven't said one word to that man. But I know one thing, like Jimmy said, no matter whether you're a parent or a grandparent, nobody's perfect. But I tell you what, whatever you spend, the most time you spend with them, every time my daughter played with Cam for like a couple years. So anytime Jimmy came to practice, I knew who was gonna be right beside him every practice. Never said a word, but he was at every practice that they were at. If they were up at the park at Marietta, he was up at the park at Marietta. That just shows, you know, how much he loves them and how much he loved Jimmy, that he would spend time with them no matter what. And I think as a parent and as a grandparent, that's the most important thing you can do, is spend time with your family. So I just wanted to say, even though I probably never spoke to him, I always knew he was going to be there, because I knew one of his grandkids or his son was at that park, so I knew he had to be there somewhere.
I'm Seth. Me and Jimmy's been best friends forever, and I've known Bill. I worked at college with him way back, long time ago. And Bill was a wheeler dealer. If anybody didn't know that Joker could find a deal anywhere and would run after it. And if I run into old Bill, I'd say, "Hey man, what about a golf cart? What about a?" And within 2 days, bling, 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 he's texting me, "What about this one? It might be in Idaho, but we can find you a golf cart." And I thought the world of him. And I didn't want to just sit there and not say, you know, that we're all here because we all thought the world of him. But he was a good dude, make you laugh, cared about you. If you had a problem, like some other people said, he's like, "What's going on?" You know, like, you know, we'd sit up there at this park right here behind this funeral home at Baldwin many a night, just talking about this, that, and the other. And he was a good dude. He was a really, really good man. World's a better place because he was in it, and heaven's a better place because he's there now.
Again, I'd like to thank everybody who came. I don't know if I got to meet everybody in person or shook their hand, but I tried. I was the one standing out in the front. It was kind of an accident by chance. I walked out there, my boss was there, and I stopped, and people just started kind of congregating around me. I didn't mean to hold up the door. I really don't know how these things work, so I guess we can sit here as long as we want, or till you feel your heart's ready. But I know she's gonna boot us out here directly. So she probably wants to go home. I know she's got a long day, but I do want to thank personally everybody who came tonight. It talks about the kind of man he was to have this kind of showing. I can only hope to be there one day. But thank you.